This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Broadcom and Carasoft. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the bad guys turn up the heat on the energy sector. Don't ignore short-term pain for long-term gain. And the Pentagon's cyber warfare survivability strategy. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. A team of researchers from Berkeley and Oak Ridge National Laboratories is partnering with the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response at the Department of Energy. The modeling the team will do will look at earthquake risks to energy infrastructure. Alex Fitzsimmons is director of the CSER office at Energy at the Billington Cybersecurity Summit. He says the threat landscape in the energy sector is intensifying, especially the cyber threat landscape.
Threats are getting worse, not better. I think it's important to recognize that the energy sector is not just a critical sector of the economy, it is the critical sector of the economy that makes every other sector possible. And we know that, but that means our foreign adversaries also know that. And so the energy sector is under particular threat from nation-state threat actors. And we have to be doing absolutely everything we can to strengthen the security and resilience of the energy sector. I think even particularly within the energy sector, subsector of the energy sector are those utilities and pipelines and fuel delivery companies that serve military installations who have DoD customers. Foreign adversaries know who they are, and they are under particular threat if you're looking at potential future conflict scenarios, because we know future conflicts will be fought both in the physical domain and the cyber domain. And so the energy sector might not think of itself as on the front lines of ensuring our national security in a future conflict, but they absolutely are.
Are they starting to understand that and starting to understand what they need to do as private sector organizations in concert with you and your colleagues?
I think so. I think there's been growing awareness within the energy sector and within government that the threats we face are real and that they are intensifying over time. And so I think that's why the CSER mission is so important. We are a unique office within the federal government, really the only office that I can think of that is solely dedicated to strengthening the security and resilience of the energy sector, of the entire energy sector. There are other offices that focus on specific technology verticals, oil, natural gas, nuclear, renewables. We focus on the entire energy sector, big and small. And so we know that 80% of the energy sector is privately owned and operated, right? And so that means we need to be partnering with them to make sure they have access to the same information that we have so that they know what the vulnerabilities are and that they can mitigate them.
Is that information exchange the most important role that you and your colleagues can play to make sure that you know what they know and they know what you know?
I think it's incredibly important. It's really the foundation of the work we do is that partnership with the private sector. When I think of CSER's mission, think of the first and foremost, our goal is to provide timely and actionable information to the energy sector. And we do that in a lot of ways. But then really it's what you do with that information, right? So that information informs the research and development of world-class cyber and physical technologies that CSER invests in. That information and those technologies are then used to harden and secure our energy infrastructure in partnership with the private sector. And that hardening and security helps us to prepare to respond and recover from cyber and physical incidents that we know will happen, the results from which then help us provide more timely and actionable information to the energy sector. It's just that continuous loop of partnership between us and the private sector that makes this a success.
I recall the first director of CSER, Karen Evans, was on my show when the office first stood up.
Right.
And she said one of the challenges that she saw was that the energy sector had information that they didn't know was really valuable to somebody else. And so they didn't know it was important to share that information. What's the best way to get that message out to them to say, maybe you don't think it's important, but it actually is important and other people should know it too?
Yeah, that bi-directional flow of information is incredibly important. Over the years, CSER has invested in a number of important capabilities so that we can strengthen that bi-directional information flow. One example is the Energy Threat Analysis Center, or ETAC, that's located out in Denver, that we've established in partnership with the industry, where we have actually cleared industry participants that can sit down with us and review actionable threat information and figure out is this vulnerability something that's widespread? Is this something that we really need to care about? And then if so, how can we tackle this as a government and as an industry? How can we mitigate it? And then how do we get that information then out to the broader energy sector as quickly as possible so that they can take action to secure their systems?
Are there opportunities to use technologies like AI and large language models and so on to help spread that information, to see what other organizations have that should be shared across the sector and so on?
Totally. I mean, Secretary Wright has talked about AI as Manhattan Project 2.0. President Trump released the AI Action Plan recently. This is a recognition that the United States needs to win the AI race. And I think part of that is figuring out what are the important applications for AI. There's AI for scientific discovery, for national security. I think one of the most important use cases for AI in the future is going to be to secure our energy systems with AI. We know that our adversaries are investing in AI-enabled offensive cyber capabilities. We need to be at the cutting edge of technological development. We need to be investing in cyber defense, and we're starting to do that in partnership with the DOE National Laboratories. We have this new program in the FY26 budget that's called AI Forts that I think is going to lay the groundwork for investing in AI for cyber defense and partnering with the private sector to really increase the speed to which we can get critical AI tools that can help automate potentially the entire cyber kill chain out into the hands of the private sector as quickly as possible.
You bring up the labs, and it strikes me they're really an important connective tissue between the private sector organizations and the Energy Department and your office in particular. Is that how you're seeing it from your perspective?
Totally. I mean, across the department, around half of DOE's funding supports the DOE National Labs. CSER partners with several of the DOE National Labs. They all have important capabilities, different expertise. I think the labs work best when they are complementing each other. You know, they're contractors, right? And so there's a little bit of a competitive spirit between the labs, which I think is good, but they all don't have to do everything. And so we're trying to put together a strategy with the labs that says, bring your best capabilities, your unique capabilities to bear. Let's figure out how each of your capabilities complement what we're doing in partnership with the private sector so that we can make progress.
You mentioned earlier, I think everybody understands that the bad guys are using these tools too. What is the best outcome that you expect to see in terms of at least trying to stay on par with the bad guys, if not get ahead of them?
Yeah, I think given the severity of the threats we face, we know that foreign adversaries are pre-positioned inside of our energy systems. They're already inside the wire. They have an ability to hold our critical infrastructure at risk for a time and place of our choosing. One thing that we have to make sure we do is recognize that we have to be able to operate through compromise. We have to assume that they are already inside. We're not going to be able to stop every attack. Everybody knows that, right? But it's what do you do on a bad day? So you have to have an operational plan in place. I mean, this security and hardening of the energy infrastructure is as much an operational planning effort as it is a technology effort. And so we have to have plans in place to operate through compromise. How do you, for example, segment your IT and OT systems so that even if an adversary gets into the OT side, they can't move laterally across the network into the OT side? Even if they get into the OT side, how do you segment particularly critical OT systems? And then how can you then make sure that when incidents occur, because they will, that you have a plan in place to respond and recover as rapidly as possible? Because in the energy sector, we're talking about human lives, right? People expect their energy to work. It's supposed to work 100% of the time. And when it doesn't, people notice, and the stakes are incredibly high. So our adversaries know that. That's why we're targeting. That's why they're targeting us. That's why we need to bring all of our resources to bear to fight back.
You can read more about the work that's happening at CSER on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, don't ignore short-term pain for long-term gain. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems, streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation. We drive it. Maximus.
Welcome back. Government leaders say using current technology like AI and machine learning is an important part of their strategies to modernize. Most agencies now have modernization strategies that include those tools. Vikram Thakur is technical director at Broadcom at the Billington Cybersecurity Summit. He says federal agencies with legacy tech shouldn't get too far ahead of themselves.
It's always good to have your sights set on the long-term solution, but the reality is that we still have in the federal government a whole bunch of sprawling legacy disconnected computers and services which need to get addressed first. So we need to deal with baseline security before we can start thinking about what the next generation is going to be. And from a technology perspective, there are so many things that we could talk about. First, let's talk about AI. It's on the top of everybody's mind. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. AI should totally be used as a part of the solution because we're at the stage where we can use so much of technology, automation, AI in order to solve things that humans have been relied on for decades. And we should totally take advantage of all of that first. Yeah.
What are the challenges that you're seeing, though, in implementing really cutting-edge technologies like AI and so on in environments and in infrastructures, architectures, where there's really old stuff, too, that was never designed to even be online, let alone integrated with technologies like some agencies want to use?
So I think the biggest issue is not with technology, but it is with the talent. Mm. There's some fantastic talent in the federal government. Unfortunately, there's just not enough. We need to hire thousands, tens of thousands or more people who can actually help implement, architect, and actually bring these systems together, both from a security perspective, but also from an interoperability perspective, being able to share data between all these different agencies that exist within the federal government. And that's, in my opinion, the biggest hurdle that we're facing today.
In the short-term perspective that you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, is the gap just the people and having enough people to do what agencies need to do right now? Or is there some other gap that agencies should be filling before they really, it sounds like you think folks might be getting ahead of themselves to think about their long-term strategies and so on.
A couple of thoughts on that subject. One, we need to be able to establish some baseline security across all of government. And we're still working on that part. So to sort of see ourselves and aim for what is going to come in 10 years, that might be a little unfair, but it's still a good thing to do, but you still need to tackle today's problems. Now, I'll talk about number two, which is from a technology perspective, where are we? With the advent of AI, we need to start looking at two things. One, out-of-the-box solutions. We need to be able to bring in technologies to create this baseline protection or defense that we need, but it needs to just work to a certain degree. And the rest of it needs to be moldable to what is actually normal in that environment. We cannot rely upon the old technology which said, one size will fit all, install this and everything will be fine. No, now you need to start focusing on technology which can learn in your environment, understand what is normal, and then what is abnormal, and then start telling you about what is abnormal in that environment. I mean, a very simple example would be, let's look at any organization. The people working in the finance for that department will be completely different from people who are in HR or people who are actually customer facing. The requirements of technologies of what is normal on their computers, whether they're using Word documents with macros which do certain things will be very different from what maybe somebody in the front office is doing. And technology needs to be adopted where it can learn that part and then tell the administrators, hey, you need to focus on these aspects. Yeah.
We have less than a minute left. That technology exists from what I hear. It's just a matter of getting it to the right places to address the right problems. Is that a fair read?
Absolutely, yes. And we need good talent. We need a lot of good talent to be able to bring that, implement it in a way where we can achieve that baseline security and a lot more.
Quick final thought. Does that talent exist, or is that something the government and industry needs to work together to grow?
The talent exists, but it is in short. We do not have enough of it. Government and industry definitely need to put their heads together to figure out how can we incentivize it? How can we make it much more affordable? How can we bring people with these skills to the jobs that we actually require?
You can read more about modernization on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the Pentagon's cyber warfare survivability strategy. FedGov Today with Francis Rose. We'll be right back.
How do we solve our nation's biggest challenges? Precision, speed, honor. No manual, no roadmap, no problem. Launching AI in orbit, using XR on the battlefield. Stopping fentanyl at the border, making America stronger, safer, faster. It's who we are and how we lead. Booz Allen, it's in our code.
I was talking with one of our global AI leads at the firm, and they were talking specifically about how their clients are seeing such different potential outcomes. And we hear a lot from luminaries in the field, and each of them have a very specific idea of what's going to happen, but we don't think any of it's predisposed. And what struck me is how much potential impact government decisions today are going to have on those outcomes. And maybe not peanut butter spread, but in very specific ways across different industries. And so we took that concept and we really thought about what are the mechanisms by which government decisions are going to influence that, and what can we kind of help educate our clients on from an outcomes perspective.
Welcome back. The Pentagon's looking for cyber partners in the commercial world to harden cyber defenses for itself and for the defense industrial base. John Garska is Director for Cyber Warfare in the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Platform and Weapon Portfolio Management in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. He says it's important to the department to work with critical infrastructure providers.
I know I talked to the National Guard Bureau just last week, talking about how we can work more closely with them. This is something that Cyber Command believes is really important. It's something that General Stanton's Cyber Defense Command is very focused on. But there's really a mixture between like what I call proactive activities, where you have to do cyber hardening internal to the company, and activities that that the department can do, because we can't be everywhere all the time. I think we're still in the process of figuring out the most important roles that we can play. We've done work with U.S. Transcom, helping them understand the challenges that they might face operating in a contested cyberspace environment. We've identified important terrain that would need to be protected. The analogy that I like to use, if you think about the mischief in what I'd call kinetic space that happened in the Middle East with the Houthis going after commercial shipping with kinetic attacks. We know how to defend against those kind of attacks. The United States Navy, has done an amazing job of figuring out how to do that. We figured out how to use the joint force to go after the places where they were launching those attacks. But if we sort of, change the scenario to think about, okay, that same vessel would potentially be attacked in cyberspace. We are in the process of figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
What would that defense look like? What are the right and left limits? And how willing are companies in the commercial sector to work with us to help close the cost equation so that we can cyber harden that terrain, so that that we get left of boom and we figure out how to reduce the risk to force, on key cyber terrain that we need to depend on.
The Navy was the first place that I heard the term that you used a few moments ago, cyber survivability. I'm not suggesting they coined it, but that's the first place I heard it. What's the definition of cyber survivability in your view from a warfare perspective in 2025?
Well, we have an official definition, which I'm not going to be able to recite on camera, but from my perspective, it is you have designed a platform to be resilient. Okay, when I think about the end state, I'll use a kinetic analogy. We developed the concept of stealth to improve the survivability of our kinetic platforms. And we designed systems from the bottom up so that they could be very, very hard to detect by radar. We have to figure out how to do that for our weapon systems. We have to figure out how to do that for, definitely critical infrastructure on our side of the fence. What I mean by that is you have to make a purposeful investment in deciding that on the worst day in cyberspace that you're going to be able to take a punch and keep on doing your mission. That may mean that you may lose some of your mission functionality, but your safety of flight is buttoned up. It may mean that, if you're building next generation systems, we have this concept called the Cyber Survivability Endorsement to the System Survivability KPP, which is for systems from the bottom up, have that. It's like, okay, you have metrics that you need to meet. It's much more challenging to deal with systems that are already deployed, and most of our systems are what we would call legacy systems. I mean, like if you use the continue the stealth analogy, you're not going to take an F-16 and make it a stealthy platform. Mm-hmm. All right, but you can take an F-16 and do a, hypothetically speaking, a cyber survivability block upgrade where you focus on, doing things to the 1553 buses, buttoning down your LRUs, aligning cyber defenders to that mission platform. So the technology exists to do this. We've done a set of what I call integrated sensing and monitoring experiments where we've demonstrated efficacy both on, for cybersecurity sensing and monitoring and cyber defense on OT cyber, operational technology cyber terrain. Mm-hmm. We recently did the same thing on a major weapon system out at Edwards, where we collected data on the effectiveness of employing these technologies. The really exciting thing about these edge computing capabilities is they're multifunction. You can use them to support cybersecurity. You can use them to help do predictive maintenance. You can help understand when you have incidents that are happening on your plane or a ground platform. You have the data that was moving over the bus that you can go look at. We have an example of an Air Force aircraft that had an in-flight incident with a fire on an engine, and they had data to figure out what had happened beforehand that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So the technology exists. One of my challenges is convincing people that We need to make the investment. But that's what makes the job challenging is figuring out, how to help us prepare for a highly contested environment. An analogy that I like to use is prior to World War II and the attack on Pearl Harbor, the commander of the fleets, Admiral Richardson, after the Royal Navy attack on Italian surface combatants at the Battle of Taranto, looked at the potential for torpedoes to be employed in Pearl Harbor and said, our torpedoes can't work in the depth of Pearl Harbor. And so an assumption was made that the Japanese couldn't develop torpedoes that would work in Pearl Harbor. And as a result of that, no torpedo nets were deployed. So one of the analogies that I use in my team is we're going to figure out how to deploy the torpedo nets in Pearl Harbor because we know that we're dealing with very determined and very capable nation-state level cyber adversaries, and we want to get in the way of their mission success.
You can read more about John Garska's office and his team's work on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in a moment.
You have data coming in. How quickly can we process that, intake, analyze, and put it towards an end product that actually helps, the agency or any given agency? And I think that's extremely crucial in the law enforcement community. Think about how quickly they can process information and get that to something usable. That could be a difference between life and death.
Everything now is automated to the point where if a police officer pulls someone over on the side of the road and uses a mobile fingerprint device, within seconds they can identify that person that's in front of them. So really the advantages that we have had in the courses of the last really 10, 15 years, the advancements in technologies has really helped us to make sure that our officers are safe and that we're being more efficient in the processes that we're expected to perform.
I think efforts in both the DoD and the federal government really are making very clear we need to make things faster, we need to make things better, we need to do it, and we need to get it out in front of people rapidly. I mean, the executive order yesterday signed by the president for AI, I think, kind of sums up the need for moving.
FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.